The reading today is from Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. In the time of King, excuse me for my pronunciation here, Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east, and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judea. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there, ahead of them, went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. May we be granted wisdom and courage for interpretation. Amen.
One thing that I forgot to say was that I wanted to remind people, especially if you're not familiar, we have two collections. And the one that the children take up, these are gifts that we give to Bethany Food Pantry. And so I wanted you to know, if you didn't know, where those gifts go every week. If you weren't here on Christmas Eve, it was a wonderful service. Our sanctuary was full, and we were surrounded by those whom we all know and those whom we only see on Christmas Eve, and we welcomed many who had never been here before. And I really don't know what made the service so special. It was certainly not my phone that rang just as worship began. And I was so thankful that I had changed the ringtone to a dove as opposed to the rooster that had been crowing. Perhaps it was the reenactment of the Christmas story. Perhaps it was the second of the day, absolutely perfect, new baby Jesus stand-in. Perhaps it was the beautiful music, the familiar carols reminding us all of Christmases past and loved ones near and far, and those who are no longer with us. Could have been the bells. Perhaps it was the harmony that only siblings can create. Perhaps it was the lack of a sermon. Perhaps it was the mystical climate that only candles and silent night can create. I don't know. But I know that people left full. And 3 people I didn't know told me that they thought that they had found their church home. One woman told me that she was going to be moving here and she was so worried that she wouldn't be able to find a church when she gets here. Certain that everyone would rush home after the Christmas Eve festivities, I found people lingering and talking and laughing and being at peace with one another. There was also a wonderful thing. After almost everyone had left, there was a giant owl right up on top of our roof who was just hooting away for quite some time, calling to someone else farther away. You could hear them reply. And as I thought about this service and the joy that I experienced and witnessed, I realized this was nothing at all that our staff had planned for. You know, we always plan the outline of the service, but it only becomes worship when we make it together. We had no idea the night would end as it did, but when it did, we realized that we had reached our destination. The mysterious men from the east were called magi. And magi were priests in the Zoroastrian and other Persian religions. Perhaps they were practitioners of astronomy or astrology or alchemy. We really don't know. What we know is that they were different from everyone else in this whole birth narrative. They weren't a part of the religious establishment of the day, and they weren't part of the Roman Empire. They were odd additions to the story. Now, they must have been very impressive because they were able to get an audience with the king. Now, to get from Persia to Jerusalem, they would have traveled over 1,400 miles. And to travel that far, they would have had a great caravan hauling all their stuff. The Magi told Herod about something big that was happening in his own realm, something really big about which Herod knew nothing. Now, confronted with this grand news, Herod surely would have been embarrassed by the fact that these rich guys from far away knew that a challenger king had been born right under his nose while he was ignorant of it. But Herod plays it cool and says, "Hey, please come back and let me know what you find so I can go there as well." But the wise men don't return to Herod to tell him what they find. They go home by another way. They avoid him altogether. Now, we're told they were warned in a dream, but I wonder about that. I mean, they were wise after all. We're told a lot about Herod, but we're never told that he's wise. If Herod really wanted to pay homage, he could have sent any number of his minions to follow the Magi's caravan. He could have gone along, but he had no desire to witness or to be engaged, to seek enlightenment. He had all he wanted. He was fat and happy, and he didn't want anything to change. Why would he go out of his way to meet someone called a new baby king? The wise men embarked on a journey, not certain where they were going, trusting they'd know when they'd reached their destination. The wise men didn't return to Herod. Perhaps they feared that another visit to Herod might not end well for them. Perhaps they figured out on their first visit that Herod was just a big, rich bully who would say whatever he needed to get what he wanted. They knew their times, their words, their actions would be wasted on a person like him. Someone so preoccupied with himself and all of his stuff that he was unaware of the good news to all people that was being broadcasted right in his backyard. They knew Herod and his kingdom was not their destination, were not his destination. The Magi went home, wherever home was. We don't hear again about them. We don't know if they, like the shepherds, spread the news far and wide. We don't know anything except that when they found Jesus and his parents, they were so moved that they left gifts worthy of a king. And without knowing where they were going, they knew that they had reached their destination. So it may seem odd that the author of Matthew, writing to the most Jewish of audiences, is the only author to include the story of these strange men from the East. But the gospel was written in a turbulent time, a time when these new congregations were trying to figure out who was in and who was out, who was considered worthy, who was considered unworthy. It was such an odd time for these new congregations. Matthew, who wrote to Jewish followers of Jesus, and these congregations were in conflict with their fellow Jewish brothers and sisters who did not follow Jesus. They were being pushed out of their Jewish communities, and they were trying to find their footing. Who are we as good Jewish people following the way? Why does it seem like we're doing the right thing and yet we're vilified for it? You know, in our country at this time, it's easy to forget that being a Christian is not the same thing as being an American. Christianity has been used and battered about the head and neck during political campaigns for generations. But the Christianity used by today's politicians is usually as empty a concept as was King Herod's when he said to the Magi, "Go and search carefully for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." An empty sentiment, a deceiving promise made only to satisfy the personal desires of a self-centered, greedy king devoted to building his wealth on the backs of an ever-growing lower class. In our country at this time, our small commitment of time each week when we gather with people who are older or younger or who live or vote or spend or save or love or look different than ourselves as individuals is really and truly a radical act. It doesn't happen in a lot of places. Fellow Christians may tell us that we are wrong because we do not see variations on the gender spectrum as impediments to receiving the good news of love and peace for all. Fellow Christians may tell us we are wrong because we want to find ways to develop a more humane healthcare system, to address income gaps, to assure homes for all, or that we don't believe that an economic system based on the exportation of war and war machinery is a just economic system. In our country at this time, we are not unlike those to whom Matthew wrote, followers of the way who are at odds with some of their religious peers who are comfortable with the status quo. We humans repeatedly create turbulence. We just seem to create barriers to belonging, so we struggle, we argue, we vilify, we neglect. Regardless the time in history, who is in and who is out challenges us. We worry about who is worthy, who gets to hear the good news, what hurdles must we jump to be accepted. Yet the message was clear. Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people, all the people. And there's mystery in this news. You know, we don't get to control it and we don't get to own it. For you see, even Zoroastrian priests from a land far away know about it. They knew of it before most of us knew about it. In our country at this time, many of us are concerned about the ways of Herod. How do we confront, avoid, subvert, engage, challenge his oppressive ways? I know many of us are afraid. Many of us wonder how we will continue and what is coming before us. Perhaps we take our cue from the mysterious wise men of the East. I say, let us prepare for a long journey together. Let us travel together. And let us trust that we are on a long journey to find beauty, grace, peace, hope, love. And may we rest assured that we will encounter the wily ways of Herod along the way. We certainly will. But let us trust that without really knowing where we are going, we know we will reach our destination. For we have heard the good tidings of great joy that are meant for all people. So together, let's pack our caravan, let's prepare gifts worthy of a king, and let us together follow the star. Amen.